So the maintenance manager is the person maintaining the equipment. Why does he do that? He maintains the equipment so that the business can, or the operations can keep on running. So the machines, they are up and not down. They can break down, you can have downtime. You want to ensure the max value of your capital investment in your assets. He's using hours and spare parts. It's all expenses, but it's expenses that are needed to ensure high uptime. And the finance department will have an interest in the money spent. They want to understand, how are we spending money? Maintenance work is like a bookkeeper. It's like what many companies see like a dead cost in a way. The only way you can make money is to bring down the amount of money spent on the work. So what you want to do is to analyze to lower the cost. You can start asking questions like, what are we doing maintenance in the right way? Should we do it more? Should we do it less? Are we over maintaining? Are we under maintaining? Is there a balance between effort and value in what we do? You can also go look into different maintenance strategies, like you may choose to do preventive maintenance on a certain interval or based on counter values and such, or you can look into reliability-centered maintenance. When you talk about reliability-centered maintenance and about how looking into how equipment function, then you can map what the equipment can do in this particular application, and then you can start asking, how might it fail in that application? So I have here a remote control. I can push this on-off button. Well, if that fails, then I will not be able to turn on or turn off the television. So that's one potential failure, and it's also one potential function for the equipment. I can map that out, and then I can say, in case it fails, then here are some possible fixes for it. It's like a doctor seeking a patient seeking a doctor. If you feel this condition, then this may be a fix for it. And once you have mapped all that, you really have a small knowledge base about how your equipment work. You have taken out knowledge from the head of people, from the experienced technicians. You know who over many years have learned, this is how the equipment work. This is how you can. This is how you fix it. Like there are stories about these experienced maintenance guys who can go out and listen to the equipment, and they know that you just need to hammer it 2 times and then it will work fine again, right? You'll be working in the basement first to implement your maintenance system. You'll be working or maybe we should call it on the foundation. You will be working by telling the system what assets do we have. That's the basic foundation. Then you'll be adding info to these assets, which include asset attributes, documents, info on the assets like maker, year installed, things like that. And then you proceed with spare parts, items, and you register them, and then you create relations to the assets. And only then do you create work orders on the assets. So to get data from the plant, first thing would be to ask maybe the maintenance manager, but more likely a system administrator, about info about the assets. Can you give me like an inventory list? They have that somewhere. They have it in Excel, or they have it in other kinds of systems or documents and so on. The next thing you might want is like a list of spare parts linked to those assets. So that'll be spare part lists where you need to create a relation to the assets, meaning that you first need to import the spare parts, maybe even with quantities, and then link those with the correct assets. That's also like an effort, because you receive the data in Excel and you need to create the relation. And oftentimes the relation doesn't really exist, because the Excel spreadsheet will be using different names for asset in this spreadsheet and in the other ones. And then you will be importing asset attributes like specifications and dimensions, what we call it. Then something that is also taking up space when you are working with maintenance is documents. So documents that can come in many forms. It can be a picture of the asset. Ooh, that's what it looks like, the oven. So you can go around, take pictures of assets, not all your assets. You would probably just need to take pictures of the main ones, because it can be difficult to manage that we'll take pictures of 30 assets. If you have those as individual photos, then putting those photos of some technical equipment, like this one, and you have a similar one here, which is which, you want to add the right photo to the right asset, obviously. But documents is also much more than that. So documents is also P&I diagrams where you have technical drawings that is frequently used by maintenance teams when they do their maintenance, because they use that to understand how does a system work, or a system unit, how does it work, and they can see the flow in the diagram, and they need that maybe even every time they do maintenance on that. And obviously you want that to be in the system available to the technician and to engineers as well. What I'm talking about here is that's things that can take days or maybe even weeks. So what we're looking into is when you have a power plant with 5,000 pieces of equipment, then every piece of equipment has an ID. So there's been someone out installing it, and they put an ID on it. It has been placed in the specific location where it is, because that's how the engineers designed the plant. So it's like, and the system should facilitate this. And then you can start doing stuff. The first step is to import your assets in a structured way. What you want to do is to organize the thing in a tree structure. And to do that, you need the numbering structure is important here, because you want your assets to use a certain numbering convention all the way through. And the reason for that is because that is often what users use, especially in industries like energy, where they commonly use a system called KKS, a German system that is used for organizing assets by their function, such as heat generation. So H is for heat generation, so all assets begin with H. And just by looking at the ID for that asset, any person on the plant will know that, hey, that's used for heat generation, this particular asset. So you walk into a room or a production facility, and in that location there will be assets that they all have IDs, and some of these IDs will begin with this H for heat generation. Others will begin will have to do with the structure, the building structure, and so on. When you have a power plant, you often receive like 30 ring binders. I've seen that many times, and it is around 30 ring binders. One of them is about maintenance. What they receive info about is like in that ring binder you'll have info about what needs, how does the manufacturer of the equipment or the constructor of the site recommend to you as a maintenance manager that you maintain the equipment. When you open this ring binder, you'll see a lot of info about the assets that you have there, and then they come up with recommendations on how you maintain, like lubrication jobs and cleaning jobs, inspection jobs. So it has like an instruction how you should perform the particular work order, and then at what frequency, like weekly, monthly, daily, and so on. Oftentimes there is a big difference between what you see in that manual versus what is actually being done, because there is a tendency from manufacturer side to be very cautious, to protect themselves, really. That's how I see it. In the beginning, they may choose to follow manufacturer and make instructions, but later on they create their own experience and figure out, okay, the maker says we need to maintain it every week, but in our experience, it's okay to do it every 2 weeks, or maybe even every 3 months. Doing maintenance means that you'll be using someone's time, and time is always expensive. Like, there is a cost attached to it, and that's just a factor. There are those in maintenance who say that utility equipment will use the maintenance strategy called run to failure. So we'll just let equipment run until it breaks down or fails for some reason and just replace it. We don't maintain it ever. We don't inspect it. We never look at it. We just expect it to work. And in case it breaks, then we'll just replace it with another part ourselves, or call a contractor and he'll come on site and do it. And you can have different maintenance strategies for different kinds of equipment. One way to work with this in the system is to mark assets as, for instance, critical. So you apply one strategy on your critical assets and another strategy on your utility assets that are not critical to the business and to the outcome of your production. It is of course important that the critical assets are covered first, but you also oftentimes need to have some kind of inspection or maintenance of utility equipment, and meaning that you need a work order on those as well. Now you can cheat a little bit and create an inspection round, or a work order round, we call it. And then apply. You just create one round order for many assets, and you'll be using that for things like fire extinguishers, ladders, and exit signs, stuff where you need to just go and confirm, yeah, it works the way it should, and then done, move on to the next. But you want to have it on record that it happened. You want to know that this was inspected on that date by that person, so that you can document it during a future audit. The daily workflow from a technician's perspective is that they come and ask about, they have a work order that they need to do. On the work order, it will be spelled out that you need 3 filters and 2 liters of oil and other kinds of equipment. And then when they get out to the warehouse, obviously they prefer that the spare parts are present. They are there. You don't go there and figure out, oh no, the spare parts are not there. That's a bad experience. Because the warehouse manager has a responsibility for ensuring that the quantities that are in the warehouse, they match the quantities that are on record. So when the technician, he is taking his filters, going out on a maintenance job, then the work order will automatically write down the inventory, and so that you know that this has been taken away from the warehouse, at least when the work order is finalized, and then the consumption of these spare parts can be referred not only to that particular work order, but also to the asset in question. Like, this month you have been using this amount of money on production line 1 or oven line 1. So you can refer your maintenance activities to specific assets, and you can start doing financial calculations on that. And it's not only the spare parts that you can refer to the assets, it's also the time used and the expenses. You need to figure out what kind of users do we want. You want to put those users into some groups, because the next thing, once you have the users in the system, is that you need to relate users and work orders, for instance. So a user in the system, in EAM, is called a resource. And when you add a user to a work order, assign a user to a work order, you do so by adding him as a resource on the work order. And then he will see, when the work order triggers, then he will see that work order in his work list. But you can also, you may not want to do person-based planning, like planning for Pete and Paul, but instead planning for the role. So instead of planning for Pete and Paul, you want to go one step higher, planning for a function such as mechanics and technicians and plumbers, and and contractors. So here are the work. This is the work for electricians. This is the work for mechanics. This is the work for plumbers, contractors, and so on and so forth. in my experience, most of the work that is being planned, that can be planned in an EAM system, that is mechanical work. So electrical work cannot so much be planned on a preventive basis, because it's more like, I've heard rules of thumbs like electrical equipment will start breaking down and show errors after like 10 to 15 years, but you cannot really go out and inspect it to verify whether it fails or not. Also keeping in mind that the maintenance inspection may itself be the cause of any errors. So if you take things apart, then that can actually cause breakdowns. My recommendation is to do to spell out how do we do the maintenance. So have the procedure, describe the correct procedure on the work order, because in case the asset breaks down, then the maintenance may be the reason for that. And if you're not following a procedure, then you don't know specifically how it is being maintained, and so you cannot correct the way it's being maintained. There are a few risks here with regards to maintenance of equipment. You can over-maintain, you can under-maintain, you can do it in the wrong way. So by following a procedure, you can have a learning organization and learn from how you did it previously and choose deliberately, now we do it this way instead. It's another way of working. It requires more mental effort, it requires more planning, but it also means that you can have a learning organization and you can bring the use of the EAM system to the next level. You want to look forward in time, and when you look forward in time, you are asking questions like, what work will we be doing in the coming months' time, or and what major assets will we be working on. You will also be asking yourself, give me some inputs for our budgeting process. So I want to see what's coming up for what maintenance can we expect, roughly speaking, in the coming year. And to answer those questions, the system can help you getting out data about resource hours that are planned on the work orders, about item quantities on the work orders, as well as any expenses that you know will come and exist on the work orders. So that's one scenario. Now, and once you start working on the work orders, that's another situation, because now you are in the middle of things. You have it like, you meet in Monday morning, you see your work order list, and you may discuss internally in the morning meeting what maintenance to do today. And then you get to the inspection job or cleaning job, alarm test job, and start thinking that, okay, so during this maintenance, we will be using these spare parts, we'll be using this amount of hours, we'll be using these expenses because we are calling for an external contractor. And then the system can give you default data so that you know, we expect this maintenance job to take 2 hours. We'll be using these spare parts, and with a specific number of spare parts, so that you know when you go to the maintenance warehouse, you will know as a technician, you will know how many parts to bring from the warehouse, so you don't bring more than you will need for the maintenance. And when you have completed your maintenance job during the day, during that Monday, then you go back to the warehouse and hand back the parts that were unused, and they will then go back into the inventory. The inventory will be written back up with the unused parts, because obviously you want to keep those in the warehouse and have and maintain the correct quantity in the warehouse as well. Once the work orders have been completed, then you can start analyzing the data that you have on record, and you can then start analyzing work being done on that specific asset, or a category of assets, or a family of assets, like an asset including its child assets. So you can analyze on many levels, and what you can specifically analyze will be resources, again with resource hours that were consumed, not the estimated ones, but the ones that we actually used. And same thing with the items, the spare parts. So you will know how many parts did we use, and you also have the expenses. So you have a correct idea of how much does it cost us to maintain this part of the plant. What you can do in Business Central, EAM for Business Central, is you can record all this info. So you have like a big database with all sorts of info on many dimensions and levels, and you can integrate that with standard Business Central functionality like dimensions, and you have financial records on general ledger where you record the financial value of hours and spare part usage and purchases and all. And it also means that the finance department can themselves go into the Business Central and ask, so how much did we spend in the period that passed, the previous quarter or the previous year, compared to another period, do benchmarking studies if that's their thing, and so on and so forth. So you can do it on the plant level, overall level, how much in total, or you can drill down and look into a specific system unit or production line. You can even do an analysis on the maker level of equipment. So you can ask, we have pumps from maker A versus pumps from maker B. Who performs better? Who lasts more years? So that you know who will be your future preferred vendor of that piece of equipment.